The 2025 NFL season is underway, and we've already seen some trades fired left, right, and center. One of them being Geno Smith being traded for a third-round pick to the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm your host here, Jason Cooper, alongside Rob Pizzola. Welcome to Forward Progress. We're going to be breaking down tons of offseason content on this channel for the NFL. So if you're new here, before we start, quickly hit that subscribe button down below if you're interested in some NFL offseason content. Let's dive right into things here, Rob. Mentioned it off the top. Raiders gave up a third-round pick to acquire Geno Smith. Just want to hear your initial reactions and thoughts to that trade for the Raiders. I know we have Pete Carroll coming in who's familiar with Geno Smith. So, yeah, just general thoughts and reactions to that trade.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised. Not that the Raiders went out and got a quarterback, because I thought the Raiders would. Surprised they traded for Geno, because they kind of end up in this spot where, a lot of teams don't really necessarily want to be, which is kind of with an average, slightly above average quarterbacks, put up really good numbers in Seattle over the past few years, but a team that still is pretty distant from a deep playoff run. I suspect we'll see them target younger quarterbacks in the draft as well and things of that nature. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised. Not that the Raiders went out like I thought maybe Aaron Rodgers might have been a fit in Las Vegas, indoors, right off into the sunset, potentially a few other quarterbacks. I didn't really see the Geno thing coming.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I want to get into here, the indoor stuff for Aaron Rodgers. And I mean, Geno Smith has been a much better quarterback indoors than he has outdoors throughout his career, as most quarterbacks are. What are your thoughts on, I guess, that going for this trade here? Do you think that's going to help out Geno Smith a lot? Because, I mean, there's been a ton of debate online about the ability of Geno Smith. Just want to hear your thoughts on the indoor versus outdoor stuff.
Yeah, TA was one of the first guys to bring this to like the public spotlight in terms of the splits between indoor and outdoor for Geno Smith. And it was quite noticeable, even some heavy rain games in Seattle over the course of his career where he struggled to hold on to the ball, struggled to make throws. It's really challenging in the NFL when we deal with small sample sizes, right? And we do this regularly over the course of an NFL season, 17-game season. We have to draw conclusions from the last 3-4 games sometimes. And, you just typically don't do that in a lot of sports betting or when you're making sports takes. The sample size on Geno indoors is relatively small for someone that's a 35-year-old quarterback, right? However, it does feel like there's something there. You talk to a lot of former athletes. I have been lucky enough to do that over the course of my career as well. They do put stock into like certain venues being historically good for them. They just feel great in that. And maybe there's some sort of confirmation bias when things go well or things of that nature. But I do think that this is a good landing spot for him, because he will have at least half of his games inside that dome in Vegas. And I mean, maybe he's not going to perform at the level he has over the course of his career in those games, but he is a gunslinger. And I think not having to deal with the elements, I think that works in his favor. So from that standpoint, I kind of do like this.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty beneficial for him from that standpoint. But the thing that kind of holds him back is the fact that, like, how I don't want to, I guess talentless is the word I was going to go for, is this team, right? This team doesn't have a lot of talent on it, especially on offense. No real standouts in the wide receiver room, no real standouts in the running back room. Their offensive line isn't great. And even on the other side of the ball on defense, really, other than outside Max Crosby, they're pretty, I don't want to say poor, but they lack that high level elite talent. So it's pretty interesting. I'm just curious what your thoughts are from a team building perspective. They have the 6th overall pick in the draft this year. You think they're going to be going after a quarterback? Or you think they're kind of going to soft tank, we'll call it that, right, with Geno Smith, and look to kind of take a bigger swing at a much better quarterback class in 2026?
I think the latter is more likely for the Raiders here. I think they believe in Geno. Like I think this is definitely a bridge quarterback situation, especially with his age. But I think the Raiders organization has always been like a we want to win organization. It's not just for optics. I mean, listen, to a fault, obviously, but you're right. I mean, there's certainly at receiver you have Jacoby Myers, and then it's no one
Trey
else, right?
Tucker,
Brock Bowers is a great
Bowers,
weapon.
yeah.
He's an absolutely great weapon, and he'll get targeted a lot. I did like some of the other moves that the Raiders made in free agency. Obviously, they brought Malcolm Kuntz back, who, for those that don't know, had a really, really good 2023, and then he was injured for the remainder of the year, all of last year. I mean, what's he going to be like coming off of a significant injury? I don't know, but they re-signed Max Crosby. They're going to get Christian Wilkins back. Like, that's going to be a really good D-line for them. They can make some noise there. It's just the overall talent on offense is concerning. And I also don't know what we're going to get out of Chip Kelly. now. I mean, it's been a long time since he's been in the league. I originally was a fan and then soured on him very quickly with the Eagles. I thought the league kind of figured him out pretty quickly. Uh, I think there's a pretty wide range of outcomes on what can happen with the Raiders this year. And then you also look at the division. It sounds insane for me to say this, but the Chiefs way overperformed their Pythag wins last year. They had a ton of close wins. It finally caught up to them in the Super Bowl. There's a decent argument to be made that that team could regress. I don't want to make that argument because I love Patrick Mahomes, but there's an argument to be made there. Denver came out of nowhere and way outperformed expectations. You know, we have seen the second year drop off. CJ Stroud had it. We could see it with Bo Nix next year. Certainly that's a possibility. The Chargers, you never know. So, I mean, I think the Raiders might actually view this as this is the time we can compete, whether that's realistic or not. I'm not quite convinced of that.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to clip that part where you said that the Chiefs are way overperformed last year and cut out the rest of the context there. But anyways, got a couple more questions getting into the next part of the video. Before we do that, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors over on Fanduel. It might be the offseason, but if you want to bet on the NFL and NFL futures, Fanduel is the place to go for that actions. If you're looking for NFL draft props, some awards props, even if you want to bet who's going to win the Super Bowl out here in March, you can do that over on FanDuel. Just visit fanduel.com/forward progress to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's fanduel.com/forward progress. So you said that this could be a year where the division might be a little bit open here for the Raiders. So again, we're going to take a step in the bookmaker's shoes super early in the offseason. A lot can change now, but as of this point, if you were FanDuel and you had to release a win total for the Raiders today, what would it be and why?
I'm notoriously very bad at this. I do want to preface that. So to me, the Raiders in a 17-game season, they really have the feel of like a 7-10 team for me, maybe an 8-9 team. But 7-10 with that division and having 6 games with those divisional opponents, and also, I hate to say this out loud, but like, let's call it's the elephant in the room. The Raiders play their home games in front of like 50% road fans as well for a lot of these games as well, because everybody makes those trips out to Vegas. So the home field advantage isn't much for them either. I would probably say 7.5 juiced very slightly to the under would be where I would line this. I don't think I could click anything at that price, but obviously it remains to be seen what they're going to add at wide receiver for the rest of this offseason, because if they do bring in another prolific wide receiver or they're able to bolster that, I would significantly like this team much better. And then offensive line, I mean, they have one of the best left tackles in the game. That's been pretty consistent for them for a while now. But is that other side of the O-line going to hold up? Is Powers Johnson going to take a leap at center this year, because he was very up and down this year? I think there's a pretty wide range of outcomes for Las Vegas, but I'll say 7.5 juice to the under would be where I would open this.
I wouldn't want to click either side on that one. All right, before we head out here, last question. Letter grade on the signing. Give it to us here. What you got?
I would say this is like a C+, this trade. I mean, if it were me and I was running a team, you directly want to be either really good or really bad, right? But this is the NFL, and there's more to that. There's more to just being really good or really bad, tanking for draft picks. You have a fan base. This is a relatively new franchise in Las Vegas. You want to, those playoff games are worth extra money. You sell extra jerseys, things of that nature. So I understand the reason to consistently try to compete. I like Geno Smith. I just think he's just like going to be your average type of guy. And at this point in his career, you're not going to, he's not going to outperform what he did in Seattle, in my opinion. So I say a C. Maybe I'm being a little bit generous here, but not a great fit, but it's not the worst move in the world either.
Lines up with me. I just wrote down directionless move for kind of a directionless team. Feel like they're kind of stuck in the middle right now, which is the worst place to be. But that wraps it up for us here today. Comment below what your thoughts are on that Geno Smith trade. If you liked it for the Raiders, if you didn't like it for the Raiders, if you think Geno Smith is going to do better on the Raiders than he did with the Seahawks, considering he's going to be indoors now. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And plus, if you made it this far, it means you like this content. So please do us a favor. Smash that like button. And as well, one last time, going to ask you guys if you're interested in off-season content, make sure you subscribe to For Progress. That wraps it up for us here today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.